Morning. Welcome to Monday meeting of the BOCC. We got, what we won't have in today is elections. Carolyn isn't able to make it, so. But we'll go down the list. We have juvenile detention, juvenile probation, and health and human services. So we'll start with the juvenile.
Good morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, and we have the financials to go over first. And so Bailey's going to put that up. So we'll do juvenile probation first.
Okay.
We did change the format a little bit. We added a target. That's what the red dot is on the bar graphs.
Oh, okay.
To kind of indicate, and we use just the very simple method. 33% of the year has expired or been completed, and so we're using 33% of budget as a target in most cases, unless we know something different. So on the juvenile probation, on the revenue area, the intergovernmental, the year-to-date actuals are a little bit below what the target is, what we would expect the target to be, but it's lagging. It's due to billing on a reimbursement basis. And so we'll be monitoring that as the year goes. It's favorable compared to last year this same time. And so we'll just be monitoring that for potential budget amendment if we need to. And then the other financing is primarily the funding from the behavioral health billings. And more of those will be reimbursed later in the year and going forward. So.
What's the meaning of the diamond?
The diamond means that compared to prior year, same time period, we're doing a comparison to see, are we on track compared to historical trends? And red would mean that it's lower than the prior year at this same time. Green would mean it's either the same or greater than the prior year at the same time period.
And when we go to the other page, and it's the opposite?
No, it'll be the same. So you'll say, is it favorable or unfavorable variance?
Okay, so
Green will always mean good.
favorable.
Favorable. Okay. And then the little red circle on the bar graphs is where we added that.
Yeah.
Like a target. Are we at target or above or below target? And then on the expenditure side for
Just a second.
Okay,
I'm
you still
just
on
trying to
revenue?
digest it a bit still. So the red circle at the bottom line on the zero line.
And that's because there's no budget. There wasn't a budget, right? And so that miscellaneous revenue has actual revenue, but it has no budget.
Oh, I see.
So there's no
Okay.
target.
Yeah, and the intergovernmental, that's from like the general fund or the Superior Court?
No, the intergovernmental would be grants, mostly
Grants.
Mhm. And I believe this is a state grant. Most of that is state grant funding.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then on the expenditure side for juvenile probation, personnel are above last year. And that's because we've budgeted for additional COLAs and things like that. So they're a bit above. And then supplies It's immaterial supplies and services. Basically, the variance from this time to last year is immaterial. And then target on the expenses for personnel were below our target. And that's primarily due to below, we have a little area there telling you current year filled FTEs and open FTEs. So we have some openings, some vacancies right now. And then on the services, we're a little bit above our target, and that's because primarily our services are internal service billings, and those are done in January.
Do we ever get a normalization per, I'm not sure what the right word, inmate hours?
I'm not sure, comparing our personal expenses
If
to,
we want to look at the bottom line, I mean, the purpose to have this is because we have juveniles. So you take the number, you take a juvenile that's been there for 3 days, that's 3 juvenile days or something like that, and you add them up for everybody, and at the end, you divide that into
total expenses.
expenses and find out sort of a bottom line metric. There may be a better metric, I don't know, but we kind of know that there's not very much occupancy there, which is
Yeah.
a good thing and a bad thing.
Want to hear something interesting? I heard, I was at the LSC meeting and they're talking about issues for next year in the legislature and juvenile facilities came up. And I guess I can say this, the commissioner from Thurston County wasn't bashful about saying this, so I guess he doesn't care. But they have Thurston, Mason, and Grays are looking at because, and I forget which one has an aging juvenile facility, but they're looking at sharing one facility and they'll ask forgiveness from the state later.
We've talked about that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the fellow from Thurston, was he the ex?
His last name was Fournier, Wayne Fournier,
Okay, I don't know him.
but he wasn't bashful about saying it. And the gal from, I think from Mason, I can't remember.
Yeah,
But anyway, that's just a side note because everybody's kind of dealing with lower volumes of, kids running through.
Good morning, George Moya, Juvenile Court Administrator. Commissioner Mortensen, I think I may have the answer to what you're talking about. This one specifically is for the probation side of things.
right.
And so for that, when we do receive grant funding, as we see it through the intergovernmental portion of it, the money there is intended to essentially follow the youth wherever they go in the state. We know there are some youth are transitory. And so the services are meant to follow the youth, no matter what county they go through. And the way that the grants work is that they use a 3-year analysis to see how many numbers you have on probation, kids on probation, and in services. So they use that 3-year to give us our funding allocation. Now, what you're seeing here now is that if we don't have enough youth entering those services, then we don't have enough reimbursement coming back. But on the same hand, you also have less expenses. So on the expenditure side of things, you will also see a decrease there. So it should always be a balance. If our expenses are 10,000 low, then means our revenue should be 10,000 low as well. So that's what it's meant to do. And so this is what we see here. And to go back to your question, so the funding, yes, we base it on the number of youth that are on probation. We calculate an FTE for that, the services that they're in, and whatever else we have to do based on state requirements. we may have to do risk assessment. So if we do a risk assessment, we get a portion of that back. If that youth is on probation for more than a month, we get a percentage of that for that. So again, that money is meant to follow those youths. And we do have grants, and each grant is very specific to the population of youth. So we tend to follow low-risk youth, meaning low risk of reoffending, and high-risk youth of reoffending. And so there are two different categories. There's a third category, which is the moderate risk. We tend to group those with the high risk. And so we do have calculations for that, Commissioner. We do have spreadsheets that give us a number, and services will also tell us that this is the max we should pay for this service. Otherwise, it's not beneficial to the citizens paying taxes. It becomes too expensive of a program and not a return on investment. So we tend to do away with those services. If we're seeing that there's negative statistics and they're not working, if a program's not working, we're not going to try to make it work. We're spending too many dollars on it, and we're going to have to do a survey. We're going to have to do some more studies. It's WISCR is the acronym, but it's Washington Institute for Public Policy who does the research of these programs. They dive in with all their analysts, they look at all the data, and they look at recidivism. Unfortunately, though, recidivism for offender matters for youth, we use a 2-year recidivism rate. So once they're done with probation or once they're done with our services, they try to calculate 2 years out. And so that's what they'll use in terms of recidivism. And so they'll use research to see if a program is being effective. And that's what they call evidence-based program. And state funding will only pay for evidence-based programming unless it's a pilot program that we're looking into, it's being effective and something that could be modeled throughout the state, then becomes a promising program. And if there's enough data to show, yeah, this program's effective, there's a lot of, you get a lot of bang for your buck as a taxpayer, then let's go with making this an evidence-based program and let's apply it throughout the state. This is working, it's cost-effective, and it's doing the job. And that's how, in a nutshell, that's how we get our funding through probation.
Yeah, I'm sure that's helpful, but I looked at the picture in a slightly different way. I don't care where the money, where it comes from. Taxpayer knows dollars are fungible. And so I would look at, I try to educate the public about how much they're paying for things. In this case, it would be in the simplest world where you didn't have any complications, you'd say, we had 100 people in probation for the whole year, and it cost us $1 million to operate probation, all costs thrown in. And then that would be a number. So I'm looking for that kind of number. And I think probation's interesting, and that based even on what you said, probation staff will grow or shrink as needs required. And that's, having an employee is always a commitment to the employee. Hopefully it's reciprocated. So I hope we don't have this kind of a thing happening.
I can let you know, in the second page, you'll see that we have 4 vacancies for FTE open.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we're doing. We're understanding that our numbers are a little bit low and we're not hiring. We're trying to be more inventive, kind of looking at, can other people do a little bit more with less people?
Yeah, you
And
have your
so-
commitment to
And
your,
so
to your
correct.
staff.
And so we do have 4 positions that right now there's no intent to fill
Okay,
for those
now,
reasons.
how do you handle that, Kathy, if there are 4 positions with no intent to fill?
So currently the budget is based upon full numbers of employees, vacant positions included. So that's why they're running a little bit lower
Right.
than what the budget target is at. And so we can amend that if we need to. This is a general fund, so it rolls back to the general fund at the end of the year.
Yeah, in this particular case, I don't know, but in general, you do want to amend because we don't want, this is a different program, but if there's money there, we frequently get somebody saying, oh yeah, and we'd like to do this, and by the way, we'll just shift a few dollars here because we didn't hire anybody.
Right.
And I'm like, we've been had again.
Yeah. So that's where your budgets are restricted in the different categories, like direct labor is restricted to only labor.
Well, we want to be careful because as long as it's under the BOCC, yes, but if it's under an elected, pretty much it's just the bottom line that counts there.
Understand?
And I can let you know, Commissioner, I can only speak for our department, juvenile and Superior Court. I think I can speak for Superior Court as a whole. That is not our practice, that if we're saying we have 1 or 2 FTEs and we have that extra revenue to spend it, that is not our practice. We understand that those are wages, those are something that are very specifically
Restricted.
earmarked for that, and we are not touching that money.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. There was one other term you used, George, that always drives me crazy. Evidence-based. From what I have seen, evidence-based is a pile of garbage. Anyhow, I had to get that in, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So that's juvenile probation. So the next one is juvenile detention. And juvenile probation is about a $2.4 million budget. Juvenile detention is a little over $3 million budget total. And on the revenue side, there's very little revenue other than the general fund supporting this program. You can see in total revenue budgeted is $56,500. And so most of that is in goods and services, which they're on track on their budget. They're also, oh, and we also did change another item, Commissioner Mortensen. We put under budget so that you could see we still have budget available, even though it's bracketed, it's still available, it's budget that's available.
Are we on the first page or the second?
Yes, the first page, I'm sorry, revenues.
Yeah.
So they're currently on their revenues. There isn't an unfavorable variance compared to last year. And then when you look at the revenue compared to budget, they're okay. Very little, of course, was budgeted in intergovernmental. They don't have anything brought in yet. And then goods and services, they had budgeted $55,500. They brought in 14,000 so far, and that's about 25% of their total budget. But the target would be, so they're a little bit under their target.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a very small budget to begin with. So
What is the difference between what? It's not a big issue. I'm curious as to why the budgets of previous years were substantially higher, or if I read that correctly.
yeah, so on goods and services, the budget, the previous year, the revenue that was brought in for the entire year was greater than the budget. So it's that light green
Right.
bar.
Yeah.
And it shows that they brought in a little over $80,000 last year. So I'm not sure what types of things come into detention revenues.
Just so that I have this correct, we're saying that last year was more revenue brought in. I think those may have been residuals from our contract that we had with Lewis County.
Oh,
When
got it.
Lewis County shut down for renovations.
Yep.
We assumed their services, and so that was per bed cost, and so we had an increase in our revenue that year.
See, it's that kind of thing, Mr. Chairman, that revenue says we could share in some way.
Yeah.
On the expenditure side, are we okay with the revenue side? So on the expenditure side, we're showing, compared to last year, our personnel increased over last year, but that's due to our COLAs and contract increases. And then the other area, the supplies, it's immaterial compared to prior year. And as far as services, it's a little bit less than prior year. So, but when we look at compared to budget on our personnel, we're below what we have budgeted, our target. And that's because we have some vacancies. The little chart below says that filled 33 position, open 4. So we're below on expenses if we were to look at target data. And then on services, we're a little bit above the target, and that's because, again, most of our internal services are billed in January. So that will level out as the year goes by, so.
So on personnel, we're down about 3% from the budget.
Yeah, so
That
they're
would
at,
scale with the 33 and 4.
yep,
Okay.
And if I may, I will like to note that it says FTE filled 33. That may be a little bit misleading because we don't have 33 full-time equivalent.
Right.
We have at least, if not more than half of those that are part-time,
part-time.
that try to fill in the gaps.
Why would it be labeled FTE then?
I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Yeah. I'll look into it to see if we did FTE or if we did head count.
Mr. Chairman, on something like that, do we care whether there are two columns? One is part-time employees and one are full-time. We just care about full-time hours primarily, don't we?
I think just full-time hours.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make that change. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
And George may want to add some additional, anything operational that you want to highlight.
Other questions you may have?
Yeah, what is this sense in the staff? Are they happy campers or is it a
Oh.
happy place to be? Even
I
though
like to
it's-
think so, yes. I know for our detention side of things, a major positive was the new collective bargaining agreement. You know, there were some perks there that I'm hoping would lead to longevity. So we don't have that staff turnover. I mean, that is the dreaded thing for us. That's one thing that we've been concerned with for over a couple of years. I mean, since COVID, I believe, we've been struggling with that. And that always plays into just the dynamics, the burnout, the forced overtime. Those are things that you don't want in your organization. Collective bargaining agreement, this go around was a great step, I would say, in the right direction for that. So I'm hoping that the few perks that they get off of that makes it more bearable to hopefully make it a career. And we'll continue to assess that, and we're always trying to improve.
Can you name the top two items of the CBA that you liked or that
One thing that I do like is, so like, it's not out of class pay, but it's specialty pay. So when you're assuming, for example, a PREA coordinator position that requires a lot in order to be PREA certified, and that's a federal act, in order to be compliance with that, we get audits. You go through a lot and you have to retrain everyone to be in PREA compliance in order to have that, essentially that certification. Normally, people have been taking on that role, extra duties, extra responsibilities for no extra pay. The same would go for our defensive tactics instructor. So people would go and get certified through the state, get that additional training, come back and train staff so that they're adequate in their training and up to date on their training in case emergencies happen or code calls happen. And so we want to make sure that our staff are well equipped and trained. And so in the past, those specialty positions wouldn't require extra pay, wouldn't give you $1 more in your hourly rate. And now we do. So it's a great step in the right direction having that. So that does a couple things for us. It kind of motivates people to, hey, if you want to go into that position, it's available to you, make that request. And for those that are go-getters and are motivated, now they're getting, the reward for that as well. So that was a major step in the right direction for me in my book, in my opinion.
that's 1 and 2?
The second one, it's clearly, it probably has to be with footwear too, that they received this year. It was an increase in that,
An increase in what?
in footwear.
Oh,
So when you're constantly on your feet, I believe it may not be different from a corrections officer or deputy, and we're requiring people to be constantly up and moving. You're constantly on your feet, you're always moving. And our facility, you've been to our facility, it's all concrete. We're not talking padded flooring, and so it takes a toll. That was one of them. Differential pay in terms of when you work swing shift, which is our 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. That takes a lot for if you're especially a family person. If you have family and you're away for the most of the time that maybe your kids are out of school, that's when you go to work and you won't be back to 11 p.m. at night. That takes a toll. Not graveyard is another position that is special. You get differential pay. So those are the positions that we are not as coveted. Graveyard, they take a toll on your body, so it's understandable. And so having that differential pay, a little bit of incentive to pick up those shifts is great. I think it's going to do a lot for us.
okay, thank you.
I was a little bit amazed at the meeting that people, there's really not a great understanding of how our juvenile system, like, for instance, in Eastern Washington, I think their grandfathers, they can share facilities. In Western Washington, you can't. They were flabbergasted that we took kids from Oregon. And I'm not sure there's a lot of them understand the system very well.
Yeah, there is a lot, but it's beyond any. I would run the place as a business, more or less.
Yeah.
And it would mean that if there was a person from Nebraska that they wanted to send here, we'd say, okay, if we had the space,
Yeah.
It gets complicated.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. We don't have elections, so Gina, I guess you're.
Now we can ask the tough questions.
Yeah. She's used to the tough questions.
Morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. This isn't our normal time slot, but Kelly graciously added me in because I have a couple of items I wanted to touch base on. So the first item is an emergency fund request that we received from the Salvation Army a few weeks back. So we had talked about this once before. They had requested about $4,210 to purchase shelf-stable meals for severe weather events. There was some conversation with the board about, whether they could cook hot meals and what that looks like. So I went back and had some more discussion with them. They had said that their plan is to provide hot meals, and the shelf-stable meals would be only a backup plan in the event that staff couldn't make it in, or there was some means that prevented them from providing the hot meals during severe weather events. So it was really sort of a backup plan if there were something that happened that prevented staff from coming in or food from getting delivered. So I wanted to just circle back with the board on the request to see if there's more questions or a desire to support the request for them. I think the quote that they provided would do 600 shelf-stable meal kits, but they do expire in 12 months. They were open to looking at other options that would not have, an expiration date in that sense. So,
Do you know if they do it in any of their other places?
I know that the particular agency they looked at, they have purchased through before. But I don't think it's something they do regularly. They do the hot meals primarily.
Is this out of that, you get some kind of fund from the state that's for emergency shelter stuff?
This is sort of a set aside from document recording fees that we've done every year.
Oh, okay.
So it would come from document recording fees. The requests from the last few years have been towards severe weather shelter. So.
Yeah, it's in government, we misuse emergency all the time. And even during the COVID, the reason we declared emergency shifted in the beginning. It was we were uncertain. It looks like maybe the world's going to end. So we declared an emergency. But in short order, we learned. And in fact, it was useful because we got PPE. We got $1 million worth of PPE for free. Well, you know what free means in that case. Somebody paid for it. We didn't. I look at the emergency thing as something like, what if Mount St. Helens hits it again? What if there's a bus, a Greyhound bus on I-5 that for some reason or other is involved in a crash and we got 50 people, some of them not able to buy a motel room or something like that, we'd probably be inclined to help. Now that's an emergency. This stuff, so you may not want to present it here today as a vote because I'll vote no, and that just means end of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll table it.
I struggle with that one. I don't know if they've tried it elsewhere and how many do they have sitting on, and if it gets close to the expiration date, do they have a place to use them? I just.
Mhm.
We know they got paid a hefty chunk of money for what they've done for the city of Longview. And I think $4,200, if I were they, I'd be embarrassed to ask for it. It's an efficiency number that I'm sure they could get that out of just being a little more careful about anything.
So
Probably a dead issue.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. That's what I was, okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item that I have, and I apologize, I'm jumping around a little bit, So this one is related to our community development block grant. This is the public services grant that goes to Lower Columbia CAP for Meals on Wheels. So we're getting ready for a new grant period. The state has reached out and would like to do a contract amendment instead of a full kind of brand new grant application and issuing a new grant. So they'd like to do an amendment that would just extend the time period of our current contract and add the funding for next fiscal year. The process for that looks like we have to submit a form that says, yes, we will want to request this amendment. The form requires the chairman's signature. They will then issue the contract amendment. We would have that at a Tuesday meeting for approval and go from there. So I just wanted to touch base and see if it's okay to move forward with getting the chairman's signature on the request for the amendment. And then once the amendment comes, that comes to the formal Tuesday public meeting is the process.
I think you're gonna have to table this one too.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, this one should be a little bit better. Okay, so the Veterans Relief Funding and the Veterans Advisory Board, there was a couple things that were discussed at the last meeting that I just wanted to touch base with the board on. So they voted on a couple of items that I just wanted to make the board aware of. So the one item that the group voted on, they are recommending that the Veteran Relief Funding pay some of the cost for the Cowlitz Veterans Stand Down event. It happens in the fall. It's a big event focused specifically on veterans, and they come and it's sort of an effort to connect to resources, get them involved in services, that kind of thing. So they voted they're recommending that the board support $12,500 of Veterans Relief Funding towards that event. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Do we have a choice on that?
Yes.
Okay, if I can stop you there. This is something that's also it probably needs to be tabled because what happens in a stand down event, it's the concept that, oh, there's a veteran out there that doesn't know that he can get this from this agency. And I'm thinking, our job isn't to go out there and substitute a convenience net for a safety net. If they're taking care of themselves adequately, however that is defined, why do we have to have this stand down event? And who goes to these events? The vendors are going to be at the event. Let the vendors pay for it. They're getting customers out of this. So I would not support that.
Okay.
So the Veterans Board wants to put on this event?
No, the event happens, and I'm not going to recall who is sort of the lead or the organizer of it. The county used to help fund the event many years ago and then stopped. And then there has been a representative attending the meetings, you might recall, who participates in the stand down event and has been advocating a little bit for the event. And so the advisory board is recommending that the relief funding support.
This is
the
a
event.
person out of Clark
Right.
County that wanted us to help support her stand down effort. And she was very strong in the sense of domineering in the presentation. And of
Yeah.
course, giving you the feeling that if you didn't agree, you were probably a bad individual is really the sense I got out of it. She really had no place at the table officially. She's from Clark County. She's not on the Veterans Relief Board. And so I'm thinking the seed wasn't too good for this. If they want to do stand down in Clark County, that's fine.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're
They-
not going to stop that, but we're not going to feed it.
Sure, and I think they do two different events, one in Clark and one in Cowlitz. So they do a Cowlitz County Veterans Stand Down event.
They do that annually?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what the recommendation was, to help fund the Cowlitz County Veterans Stand Down event. But
Mm.
it happens in the fall, and so we can revisit it down the road if we'd like to.
Yeah, I'd be with Commissioner Mortensen on this. If we're paying money that's actually something for a veteran, I can get behind that if we're doing something, but this is just,
It's a marketing thing.
yeah, marketing thing. And so I'd rather we actually do something with it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Tough morning, isn't it?
It's okay. That's okay. They had recommended two other things that I wanted to mention as well. So one item, they recommended developing a separate website for veterans relief funding to make it more user-friendly. I think there's some more sort of fleshing out maybe that needs to happen with the group to figure out what really they're looking for, hoping for. Right now, we have a landing page on our website that's for the Veterans Relief Funding. We have some resources there, information about how you apply for the funding and where you go. So they had brought up this idea of having a completely separate website from the county website. We haven't really looked a lot into it in terms of what that would entail or the cost. I'm assuming that would be something that like HHS would then take on and be responsible for updating. But I just wanted to mention that idea came up. We can definitely improve our landing page and our website and try to add whatever information they're interested in having on there. So that's a conversation we'll continue to have with them, but
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that. And the other thing that came up was funding a 1-800 phone number for veterans to call, sort of a 24/7 available number that would be staffed by veteran volunteers to answer the phone. So the idea was, a veteran is in some type of crisis or needs help with something, and they would call this 1-800 phone number. A veteran would answer on the other line and help try to connect them with what they're needing, whether it's food or if they're in a mental health crisis or whatever the need might be. So that idea came up as well. I think the thought behind that was somebody, either an agency or an entity, would manage it and line up the volunteers and do all of that piece of operating it. And they would be looking for the Veterans Relief Funding to pay for the phone line. So I wanted to just mention that as well. We had some interesting discussion at the last meeting. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised there isn't already one out there, to be honest with you.
I think there's
I
a
mean-
statewide
There are all
think-
kinds of numbers out there. What is it? 888
988.
or 988?
Yeah, and then I think from there, if you're a veteran, you can push 1 and then you have access.
Yeah. So I think this is the way things grow. You know how many welfare systems we have? It's like, this one's slightly different. This one applies on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
But they do have an issue that they're not sure, and I'm sure you'll stop me and say, no, you're wrong. We're collecting funding faster that they're spending it on the individuals.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they discussed was transportation, and that one's difficult, but I think it's reasonable if that's what they wish to do. That I could help argue with that. But I also think that the biggest problem I hear time and time again is the VA hospital. a horrible place, apparently. I just don't know, but I'm told. And I think there are VA issues that are, I mean, I'd be willing, okay, how much money do we have available in the fund at the moment? It's
About 850,000.
850K.
Yeah.
That's enough for us to hire a lawyer on retainer for the benefit of VA type. So frequently we hear about, I got denied this, I got denied that, I can't afford a lawyer, what is it I'm supposed to do? And the only way you can get through a bureaucracy apparently is through the legal system. So, I mean, they might entertain, that's enough to
Mhm,
have a lawyer on retainer, I'm sure.
mhm. Yeah, they,
It's just a thought, your comments?
Yeah. I've heard people say it's difficult to deal with the VA, and anyway, some of these folks wouldn't know how to walk through that by themselves, I'm
Mhm,
sure. I mean, because it can be a lot of bureaucracy and stuff, and it actually drives me crazy that we have to have attorneys help us through everything, but I kind of agree that might be a service that would actually provide some benefit to these folks.
mhm.
You know, I don't like to step on the committee's toes. It sounds like you've been okay with the committee over the past years.
I
but-
missed the last meeting. I began to complain a little bit about the lady I mentioned because she really dominated the meetings and was trying to control things. And in addition to the stand down, there were discussions about maybe we ought to go out in the woods someplace and see if there are any veterans there we can help. And I'm saying, this is not the idea. This is not why I would support this thing. In fact, in my senses of frustration, sometimes I think this is classic. We're collecting a lot of money. It's being managed quite nicely by a group of people, and we're not spending it fast enough, so we have a problem. And I'm saying there are two solutions. One is we just turn the money off. It's obviously not that important. Or we come up with other solutions that are
Mhm.
sensible. But they don't have sensible solutions. I haven't heard of a really
Yeah.
sensible
Yeah.
solution.
I would chime
I'm
in.
not a
as
board member. I'm not a board member, but I attend them.
You attend them.
And I just, I don't have a vote. I don't have a say. And most of the time I try not to interfere.
Yeah. And I agree. I'm not big on hoarding the money but I need to see a benefit if we spend it, not just
Mhm.
it's for veterans, so it needs to be a direct benefit in my mind.
Yeah. They are starting to look at, I think at their next meeting is tomorrow, and they would like to revisit the section of the policies and procedures that outline the amount of assistance and what it's provided for. So they are going to be looking at those pieces to consider increasing some of that assistance limits, for example. So they're going to be looking at that as well. And we continue to have conversation about a sort of RFP type process that agencies could apply potentially for a specific veteran serving project, like transportation came up as an example of that. So we continue to have those discussions. They had come up with these couple of ideas, and I just wanted to kind of have some brief conversation to kind of get a feeling before, if we start getting, start doing some work on these things, I'd like to know a little bit where the board's at with it, so we don't get too far in if we know it's not supported.
Here's one of the difficulties we face in almost all these programs is, well, you did it for him. Why can't you do it for me? And not everybody, and most everybody is individual and has different circumstances. If my Aunt Emma is not interested in driving me to the VA hospital, is one case. Another one is where I don't have an Aunt Emma. I don't have anybody, and I cannot drive. How do I get to the VA hospital?
Mhm.
If we are willing to set policy that is really pretty stringent, I would think giving someone an Uber chit is going to be the most efficient thing we could possibly do.
Hmm.
So I'd entertain conversations along those lines. I have not heard anybody specifically complain about the Veterans Relief Fund not supplying enough for whatever it is that they're supplying at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
I
Okay,
think because they've managed to keep it contained, it doesn't explode.
yeah, yep. Okay. So maybe more on these items at another date. And we'll keep talking to the advisory board about what they're looking at doing in the future. Okay. So that was all I had. I'll bring the CDBG item back when Commissioner Weber is back. And
So that one is just an extension on an existing contract.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
anything
But
that
it's
comes
extra
up
money,
within
right?
that.
it comes with next year's allocation, yes.
It's reallocating it.
So it's approving the allocation.
Right,
Okay.
again.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out where your objection was, and I can see that then.
Oh, yeah, otherwise, agreed. No, actually, you know what, what's going through my mind now is that all along, the expense on the Meals on Wheels has been very frustrating to me because I cannot seem to get a straight answer. And when I don't get a straight answer, it smells bad. And then when I get the answers, because they're all over the map, they don't really, the expense is much higher than I would expect. And they claim it's volunteers, but they're paying their volunteers whatever the amount is per mile. And for most people, that's probably a plus. So ignoring all that now, what I'm thinking is inflation is such that what used to be $1.50 at Taco Bell is now $3. Maybe the price of these meals is now rational. But we'll have to look.
It's flabbergasting to go through. No, I don't mean to make light of it, but yeah, you go through fast food, you're going, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, I had,
No, I'm glad I don't have a car full of kids.
I know, it is.
yet people seem to be spending it, and I'm just flabbergasted. But I know that that the credit card debt's exploded.
Mhm. Yeah, it is.
Old guys, not you, you're a young guy.
Yeah.
Old guys, you know, if we ate out once a month, it was somewhat of a miracle.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the ballpark cheeseburger prices are still pretty good. You can get a meal for $10.
Yeah. Thank goodness for the ballparks.
Yes. So, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the discussion.
Okay.
And I appreciate your openness in bringing it to us too.
We got 5 minutes. I got a miscellaneous came in email to me. It's from and I know Commissioner Weber isn't here, but it's from the Laluska Foundation and Culture Center. They are applying for a Washington State Historical Society Heritage Capital Grant. It'll enable them to develop schematic design for a new museum building, interactive interpretive exhibits, and conduct much needed capital improvements across their property. What they're asking from us is if we'd be willing to write a letter of support for the organization for their grant with the state.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I am too. I didn't have an issue with that. So.
So the question is, who's gonna compose that letter? Probably should be Dennis.
We're of the same mind.
Very good.
I was gonna ask Commissioner Weber to compose it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm more short and to the point. Give them the money, they're good.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple minutes if we want to recess for the other. I don't see Public Works or the Event Center yet, so we can take a short break.
Yes, okay. So this week I have on the agenda for you a contract with the city of Kalama for $30,000 from the lodging tax funds. This was approved and voted on by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee last year. They approved sending $30,000 to each of the 5 cities out of their excess lodging tax funds.
Okay, so, and then we'll probably see the other cities as they come up, or we've already done the other cities.
Nope, this is the first of the 5. This is the first city to send their contract back.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
So we chatted a little bit. Did you want to bring the chairman up to date on our chat? I had asked, so we're under an obligation that this money is to be spent in a certain way. And unfortunately, I'm
For things that
Always-
bring tourism in.
right, and I'm
Right.
always suspicious, and the words are tortured sometimes. And I just asked, how was it spent? How did you verify that it was spent properly? That kind of thing.
Yes, so Commissioner Mortensen and I talked about, this money goes out, it has to be spent on exactly what he said. It has to be spent on tourism promotion. There's definite ways to spend this money. So in giving this money to other entities, his question was, how are we ensuring that this money is used properly? So each contract that goes out as part of a grant or funding for a project report goes out that's required to be returned to us at the end of the year. As we went through this report, it's fairly vague. It talks about overall attendance, attendance for the event or activity that brought people in from more than 50 miles away. There's a line for out of state and out of country. And then it also talks about how these numbers were obtained, whether that was indirect count, a direct count, a structured estimate, or an informal survey. And each event or entity does it different ways. And then they talk about how many people they believe paid for overnight lodging, how many people attended but did not pay for overnight lodging, and then the number of nights. So this report goes out with everything. It is required to be sent back to us. As a county, we also have to report these numbers. It's called a JLARC report that Kathy is doing for us. So these numbers do come back and go back to the state because we are also required to report these.
And I did look at the numbers and they tell me virtually nothing except that they look contrived.
Yeah, each event has their own way. So I had sent him an example of an event that received funding from one of our small grant programs and kind of looked through how they did their reporting, and it was very vague.
Yeah.
So I had mentioned that I would reach out to different counties that also fund different grants or different programs and events. The one that has gotten back to me so far does have a very similar report. Their questions are a little, their questions are wordier, but they essentially say the same thing that ours do. And they base their report off the JLARC report. So it's something that we need to look at it as a lodging tax advisory committee, what better questions we could ask and in getting that data.
So let me ask you, did you know about the smoke out, the Kalama smoke out?
Big Smoke,
Big
Little
Smoke?
Kalama.
Well, when I saw this, my first thought was for their big smoke event, because they wanted to bring in bands or stuff. I didn't know what they were doing, but that's the first thing that popped in my mind.
And you knew about that because you're on the LTAC or?
Yeah, sitting on LTAC, they'd come in for, I don't know, it was this one. It wasn't this one, because you're telling me this was just some extra in the,
Correct. This contract is for 30,000 just to the city of Kalama. The city of Kalama will add this to their own lodging tax funds. And if they choose to build a facility, if they choose to fund events through a grant program, I'm not sure how they will use that. They will have to send us the report back telling us how they use that money, but no, this is separate from that. But the example that I sent to Commissioner Mortensen was from the Big Smoke Little Kalama event.
yeah, I remember seeing, I don't remember the dollar amount on it, but
Yeah, it's the thing that puzzles me is, again, I'm probably making a big deal of something, but I don't like numbers that don't make sense. And I'm always concerned about $30,000 equally to all the 5 municipalities sounds almost like we abdicated our responsibility to choose or guide or something like that. And there are possibly good interpretations, but I look at Kelso, what's their visitors?
Oh, the Kelso
Center?
Long Beach Chamber Visitor Center.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they actually do a pretty nice job there, and you can see 30,000 would be reasonable to spend at that. And it is a tourist visiting center, and it's something that is clearly tourism orientated. You look at the smokeout and you scratch your head and say, okay, new events take time to build up. And maybe this is part of a 5-year plan to develop the smokeout as a place that people even from Austin, Texas would come to a barbecue event. But I don't know that. And I'm saying there are a lot of reasons. I just don't want us to be part of just throwing the money in the general fund for them where they do things that don't make any sense from a tourist standpoint.
I agree. And we had a conversation with Kathy a couple weeks ago talking about the lodging tax and how that comes into the county. And I think that was really educational for all of us to listen to. But also it's a great thing to have, right? We've not had, with Hofstad Bluffs being sold in 2016, that obligation went away. And so I think there's some opportunity moving forward with the lodging tax funds that we have coming in to definitely continue our small grant and our large grant programs. But I think there's other opportunities that we need to explore with the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, which is of course separate from this meeting, Commissioner Dahl, but that's something that we can talk with them about and a better roadmap for those funds in the future. And I think also having the grants be a little bit more competitive, as you just mentioned. Right now, I know the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee looks at all the grant applications, they look at the funding and they say, okay. And, and if there was, $200,000 worth of grants or grant requests for $50,000, it would make it a little bit more competitive and make them look a little bit closer at that. But right now that competition's not there. That's my
Yeah.
backstory that has nothing to do with the contract in front of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I was just down and I had a friend from Houston that was in town visiting a relative down in Ridgefield, so I met her in minimums and just looked over the public market and stuff. So I always tend to I probably give Kalama a little grace because they've done a lot of, and you have one of the ships in there and I'm going, man, it's just busy.
Don't confuse the city with the port.
Well, I
Sorry.
get, I understand it's different. The port is, yeah, different, but
How was the marketplace? Empty, full?
no, it had people in it. Not a ton. There was
Yeah.
one new, looked like, I don't know if you want to call it a bakery. It sold some bakery goods. I don't know if
Yeah.
they did them right there, but one new little spot in there from the last time I walked through, and they added, I think, another food truck or something outside.
On the outside, yeah.
Yeah.
I should know this. When do the cruise lines start to come in?
Well,
They've
there was
been
one there
coming in.
yesterday.
That's
Yeah,
their
we've been
first
getting them
one?
5 to 6 days a week for, starting in April.
Starting in April?
Mhm.
Yeah, there was one
Yep.
there yesterday.
American Cruise Line starts the first week of
I keep
April.
an eye on that and I don't,
They have different ships that stop, but we get them up at the mountain. We're 5 to 6 days a week. Well, American Cruise Lines, I take that back. I believe they're 4 days a week. And then we have some other cruises that are coming through also, or excursions.
okay, the dock is exclusive American Cruise Line for another year?
Yeah, they bought out the American Queen, so their numbers have been, I talked to one of their tour guides on Friday and he said they've just been booked. And I asked him how long he'd been on the ship and he said typically he does a 6-week stint, but he's been on 10 weeks or going on 10 weeks. So he said they've been really busy because American Queen went bankrupt. Hopefully a good summer ahead.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. Public Works has multiple items on this week's agenda. Big surprise, I know. The first item is the call for bids for our annual striping program that it will be set to open on June 12th of 2024. It is for, I didn't write down the number of miles this year, but we're doing our normal striping. This year, we do not have as many neighboring municipalities participating. So Castle Rock is not participating this year, nor
The
is
Price of paint.
price of paint
Price of
keeps
paint
going
drove
up.
them out, yeah.
Yeah, so, and Wahkiakum County is not participating this year either for the same, they just don't have the money to do it this year. So that will be a call for bids. Our next item is the bid award of the Kalama River Road Culvert Replacement Project for a cost of $105,300, and that's to Compass Construction Northwest. We received 6 bids on that project, and the bid is well below the engineer's estimate, partially because it's a small project and we just didn't know what to expect. And a lot of times on small projects, we tend to inflate our cost. I think what helped us on this project is the contractor who's also been awarded the Eric Creek. No, was it Eric Creek? No, Slide Creek. They were also awarded the Slide Creek, so they'll be up in this area working. So I think that has given us some economy of scale on that particular project. Then we have the contract execution for the Eric Creek project, which is $1,913,913. We awarded that a couple weeks ago to Active Construction,
And where they've returned their documents to go ahead and get that executed. That is a 100% federal funded project.
You're ready to get into a fisheries conversation again tomorrow?
Yes, I'm very excited for another fisheries conversation.
Well, when I noticed the 913, I thought, is she trying to mock me?
No, that is just what they've been. And we continue on the fish theme because our next item is the resolution to create a project for the North Fork Goble Creek Fish Passage Design Project. This is a Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board design project for 85% state funding. That will be replacing the existing box culvert out there on North Goble Creek Loop Road. Why we have such long names, it makes it confusing. And this is just to the east of Mahaffey Road. So there will be some impacts to Mahaffey when we go to construction on that project. The existing box out there is undersized, it catches materials. So it is a problem for us maintenance wise, in addition to being a fish passage problem. And then our motion item for this week is the local agency agreement and perspectives for the Owl Creek Bridge Replacement Project to obligate $1 million of federal highway funds through the local bridge program for the preliminary engineering phase. This is the bridge that is on Old 99 South, just to the north of Rose Valley Road. It is a 1923 bridge on one span and the other is a 1950s bridge. So we're doing a design. It's a project to replace that.
$1 million for the design?
Yes, this is predicted to be a over $6 million construction project.
Wow.
Wow.
So
That, will that close 99 down?
no, fortunately, as I said, there's two different spans that span Owl Creek. So we are predicting that we should be able to go in, demo one of the two bridges, keep traffic on the other, and then switch once we get the half of the new bridge constructed. So that is the tentative plan for out there. It will complicate traffic out there due to how close it is to Rose Valley Road and the amount of traffic out there, but we should be able to keep it open one way.
Why don't we make it no vehicle traffic there except for bicycles? Just a suggestion.
That will increase the traffic on Kalama River Road roundabout for all of your bicyclers that are doing that
Push
route.
everybody up on the freeway.
And we'd probably delayed, have to go through the tire dust study.
You won't forget that, will you?
And it'll add, 10, 15 minutes to my drive every morning.
But HHS would join us because the riding the bicycle would be so salubrious.
So maybe I would park a car on both sides of the of the bridge
Of
and
course,
just
you'd
walk
have to
across.
subtract the number of people to get hurt riding the
Yes.
bicycle.
Any questions on my exciting items for tomorrow?
I did go on a bike ride once in San Diego and I turned around shortly after I'd gotten going because there was a cyclist on the road, he had been hit.
Oof.
It's a little hard to continue when you see that.
I have to admit, this weekend, when I was driving on SR 432 towards I-5, there was a bicyclist, I believe it's the Harry Morgan Bridge is what they call the bridge on 432. So he was headed eastbound in the westbound lanes going across that bridge, and it just scared the dickens out of me.
I have suggested on occasion when I can get someone's ear that if a bicyclist is violating traffic rules, pull them aside, issue them a fine.
Mhm.
Riding bicycles on the sidewalk on the left side of the street, you're asking to get hurt. In fact, we had that happen on Ocean Beach Highway, didn't we? 5 years ago, a young kid. Anyhow,
I don't recall.
the rules are there for survival, not for arbitrariness.
Yes, and it helps the drivers not hit you if you're following the rules.
Yeah.
Drivers don't like surprises.
No. Okay. Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we do have stuff at 11. Since we're advertised, do I need to wait till 11? If you wanna, why don't we take a short recess, see if we can get Jessica in and we can wrap this up a little earlier?
Yep.
Okay. Human resources won't be available till 11, so we'll just recess till 11. Okay. Okay, back in session with human resources.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I do have one request this morning from Kathy in Finance. You want to come up? So Kathy's requesting an additional summer help for her office full-time. Initially, we were going to split between offices, but I think there's more than enough work for multiple summer hires. So she's here to make that request.
This morning, we confirmed and we did an inventory kind of all the boxes that are in the annex building on the 3rd floor. There's 200 boxes clearly labeled. More than half of those are risk management boxes. But the problem is they do not have the proper destruction dates segregated, and I don't know what that terminology is from the state archives. Bailey, what is it? It's a DUNS or DAN number, not done, DAN number. And so that work needs to be performed. We have about 30 plus boxes just in our office that need to be reviewed, completely reviewed. And it looks like we're going to have to review those 100 plus boxes over in the annex as well to get them appropriately categorized and organized with appropriate destruction dates. So.
How do you do that with temporary help that may not know what's important?
So one of the things is that there's a little system with these colored coded papers. And we would do some training with them, of course. And we would review their work. But organizing some of the boxes, like recognizing, is this a workers' comp case? Looking, and we can provide the information whether the case is closed or still open, because that means the destruction date is different. And so that's what we're looking for this summer help to help us do, is take those color codings and do some training with them so that they understand what the different pieces of paper mean and organize the boxes.
So once the boxes are organized, what happens next?
So my goal would be that the box would, and I have a great example, building and planning have their boxes and they have this nice label on the outside of the box that says what the materials are that are in the box. And it actually has the destruction date based upon the state system. And so that's my goal, is that every box would then be labeled with an appropriate destruction date. And you put all the materials in that box that have the same destruction date.
And then they would go to a shredder's outfit.
Yes, but once we submitted the paperwork for approval to destruction logs. bef-
So you need approval from the state somewhere?
I think we need approval. Our process, I believe, would be to submit that approval, those sheets to the Public Records Office, according to the new policy.
Yeah, that new policy says that it requires the signature of the department head and then the public records officer.
Mhm. Yep, so I would not be looking for this person to do any destruction, but to help us organize the boxes and get them ready so that in the future we could destroy. And there may be some items that need to be destroyed right now.
So the 200 boxes, is that everything on the third floor? No, that's just a
No,
mere fraction,
That's
right?
that's a fraction. It is just one little area corner unit. It has its own lock. And there's some purchasing documents there, risk management documents.
Just a lot more documents, yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Um,
And those are just the ones I found. I hope there isn't any others on that floor. There's a lot of documents there.
I have two comments on that. One is that I typically look at a summer hire. That's what we're looking at.
Yes, some are higher.
Yeah, is young people that we hope to enthrall them with our potential as an employer. Doing this work probably doesn't do it.
I'm not
But-
sure it
but-
would.
But I think we have to ignore that. The other comment is, we have to clean up a mess that's
Yeah.
been accumulating over 100 years.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? And I am wondering whether one person is enough. Can you handle two? Can you handle three? In other words, we have to decide whether we'll ever catch up. Now, because we're doing much electronically, I'm sure we'll catch up now, but do we want to catch up in 3 years or in 300 years?
Yeah, I can't gauge, like I said, because I don't know everything that's there. But I do know that in discussing and looking at everything HR has, they have more than 200 boxes, I believe.
I don't have a count, so I don't
Yeah.
want to put a number to
Yeah.
it, but there's a lot of boxes out
Yeah,
there.
so it was very obvious that they probably have sufficient work for one summer help, and I know we have enough work for one summer help for just risk management items.
Yeah,
Um,
we're currently doing one person for HR and for the same kind of purpose.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we interviewed 5 candidates, five individuals. All were excellent. And then 2 were the top candidates. And so what I'm proposing is that we would select the second highest ranked candidate out of that pool. And
When
I
you
was
say
very
we-
impressed.
When you say we, it's you and HR collaborated and you saw 5
And,
candidates you
and
liked?
Ann Bailey from the Commissioner's Office. We had a 3-panel interview session with the 5 candidates.
Mhm.
And they were excellent. I was very impressed with the candidates being, some of them finishing their first year of college. One candidate was getting ready to go to college, and they were very impressive.
I'm good with it. I'm almost, I think, Commissioner, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounded like you suggested if you think you could use 2, we'd be okay with 2. And I would tell you that if you think you have work for 2 and get through
Yeah.
that.
My problem
Yeah.
is I don't know how to gauge it. And plus, we do need to have some type of supervision. And so I don't know our capacity to supervise more than one, and they're thoroughly looking at the documents that we're labeling for destruction. So that's my
Well,
hesitation.
okay.
I don't think, and
Well,
I
leave it
don't
up
think
to
we'll
you, but
fit.
if it's in the
Yeah.
summer, you said, man, we could have used another. And so
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know, but we'll probably be back for next summer, probably. is what
Well,
I'm
at that time,
anticipating.
a lot of students, if they're local, will want to
Yeah.
stay on part-time, and if you, at that point, you will know whether you can trust them or not, and,
Yeah, that's a good point too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And by
Okay.
trust, I mean,
Yeah.
every level.
Well, this candidate, one of the candidates we've identified, I don't think they're here for the summer. They're back for the summer only.
Yeah.
They have to return beginning of August to their college.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I agree with Commissioner Mortensen. We're way behind on some of this stuff, so I don't have any problem doing that.
so maybe look to see our capacity to take two, because I said we have 5 great candidates.
Yeah.
And I know HR is going to take one of those. potentially.
Yeah, as far as, the question on needing more than 2 or not, since this is the first year that we're looking at this, I'd like to see what we can do with the one and
Yeah.
our capacity to supervise and properly train them and stuff, so.
Right. No, that's all smart. I'd be a little, it would be an extraordinary candidate who could, in June and July, that's 8 weeks plus another 2 in 10 weeks, do much. But I hope that's true.
And there is sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There is the potential too, if this type of program is working for us, expanding to some sort of extra help position through like LCC, a student that's here locally that can work on a part-time basis throughout the
I
year.
like
if
that
this is
thinking. Yeah,
Continuing, yeah.
I
You
do
know,
like that a
we
lot.
did it at the credit union. As far as I knew, it was pretty successful. It was good having the kids in and we probably even retained 1 or 2 over the years we've done it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then I have a request for an executive session for performance of a public employee.
How long?
10 minutes.
Okay. So we'll adjourn to executive session, performance of a public employee, 10 minutes.
Board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 11:28.
Okay. Back from the executive session, no decisions were made. Jessica, I'll turn it over to you.
Jessica Warren, Human Resources again. I have a couple additional requests from OPD. The first request is the request to start their open legal specialist position at step 2.
So moved.
Second request is to promote one of their legal specialists up to step 6 of the current salary grade effective June 1st.
Okay.
I forgot we were not in that motion.
We just need
I
nod
nod.
approval. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the last item is to promote a current attorney, Jamie Foster, who's a regular public defense attorney, to senior attorney effective July 1st.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
That takes care of everything? All right. Unless there's miscellaneous, we will adjourn. Thank you.